Hello. Today's topic is how to obtain good large honey from acacia or from early nectar sources. That is, in the central region, for example, from dandelion. There can be a new large bloom, the weather is good, but people cannot obtain early honey. So how to get this early harvest, or acacia in the south, that is, white acacia blooms, but by this time the colonies are not yet developed enough to take this nectar well. So, the method that will be specifically about this. In previous videos, we showed how queens are reared using a diaphragm. How Show Silas rears queens with the help of this diaphragm. We obtain here 3 hives annually. And in the previous method, we showed how we combine the fat split that we have on top with the main colony. Here, so as not to repeat, I will start right away that this split, which we left on top of the main colony, we do not combine with the colony, but leave it to winter through the diaphragm above. That is the grids, and all inserts with grids are closed. Only the mesh window is open. And here, above the main colony, it goes into winter, and the split winters successfully mainly because it benefits from the warmth of the main colony. And wintering always goes well, and you have already obtained good honey this year, but not from the early harvest. And do not combine, as I showed in the previous video, do not combine the split with the main colony, as we did in the previous video. Leave it to winter, above the main colony. And how do we do this? We take the early nectar flow from acacia, dandelion, or some other early nectar plants. So, the bees have wintered. In winter they come out on 2 bodies, the main colony, and on 1 body the split that wintered with a young queen. Here we have a young queen, and here they come out of wintering. What are our actions? So after we have cleaned the bottoms, we won't repeat that. The first task is that you clean the bottoms. It is done very quickly and can be done even when it's cold, as I asked. So, what is our next task? The second task is early spring. I repeat, we raise the body, even if it is still cold. And we remove this plug on the dividing excluder, as mentioned. For those who haven't seen it or have forgotten how the range is structured, it is arranged like this. Here we have double metal screens, and here we have the queen excluder. Here we have a landing board that flips over. This is a universal diaphragm that has a huge number of functions. So, early in spring, we open this plug, we opened it, and everything is put back in place. What is the next task, and what did we do after that? Why did we open this plug? The bees start to communicate. There will be 2 queens. In early spring, it is never the case that bees destroy any of the brood. No. In early spring, there are always 2 queens remaining. Always. There has never been a single case in our entire history. You can also use the same method if you have a weak split somewhere, and see that they won't be discarded in the spring. Using the same method, you can set it up, let it sit for a couple of days, and you can open this plug, thereby freeing the queen excluder, and the bees start to communicate. The colony kind of stabilizes. Here you will have more bees, and here there will be fewer, and the bees stabilize. If this queen lays better, you need to take more care of the brood, and more bees will come. If the queen lays well here, more nurse bees will come here. That is, the common bee. And due to the fact that the warmth is not used by one, this swarm develops much faster. It would be much better if it stood alone. The next spring work is to simply check the edges, remove the funnel, see if the edges are sealed, if everything is good. You can place a concentrated frame to check if everything is fine. We put it back. So we check ourselves, lift the hive covers, and check, take out if there is feed, if the queen is laying. If there is feed, everything is fine. We leave this colony alone for a while. What can also be done, as I always recommend, is to wait for 10 minutes. A day here in the feeder, then for those who haven't seen, look here in the top feeder, pour half a glass to a full glass maximum. This is important, of sugar syrup or honey. Some ask such questions. Will this syrup get into the honey if given in the spring? No, it definitely won't get into the honey. Because at this time there is a rapid development of bee colonies, and this glass, or there was a glass, was immediately consumed by the bees for this expenditure, for the development of the colonies. That is, bees always prefer to first consume liquid feed that is not sealed, and only then do they uncap the honey. They will never uncap the honey first. They will save the liquid feed. It doesn't happen that way. Therefore, to make it clear, this syrup in spring, if you feed a little, will never get into the honey. It's impossible, and the bees will definitely spend it on the development of the colony. This will also consume all the honey that remains here, and you will still spend it all. That's why I always recommend feeding for these 10 days. Why? When you feed for about 10 days with half a glass or a glass, you, firstly, stimulate the bees to search for any nectar sources that are already in nature. Secondly, you stimulate the queen. She starts working, intensively feeding the queen, and the queen begins to lay more eggs. The bees see that some nectar flow is coming, and the colony starts to ramp up and gains good momentum. You can choose not to feed, as there have been years when we did well without it. But when you feed for 10 days, the growth is much faster. This rapid growth is very important because it is cold outside, and at night it is still cold, and the colonies are weak. Even if your flowers are blooming, when you feed, you significantly increase the strength of the colonies, much faster. For example, in the central region, this work is done in April. It's April and it can still be quite cold outside, and if there's a prolonged storm and there are no pickups, or they'll bring it down, then what can't they take? So you can feed for more than 10 days, maybe even 20 days. You will never be at a loss because of this feeding. You will only benefit from it. This is guaranteed, as the colony will develop faster, and you will later reap the rewards. In the south, it's the same, just about a month earlier. There's roughly a month difference. Therefore, you need to start observing your hives early. Everything depends on when the first blooms appear. For us, for example, the first bloom is around the 27th of March, which is a normal bloom. We take this into account, and everything develops well in this heat. We don't add too much, and everything develops without loss. By May, for instance, we have blooming fruit trees, and all the colonies are strong and well filled. What do we do next? This is again specific to our region. In the south, everything happens a bit earlier, but the rest is essentially the same. We set the split aside and we close this plug on too. That is, the communication of the bees has basically stopped. It can continue, but it is no longer desirable. Problems may arise. We move the diaphragm to the other side. And what do? We carefully and meticulously set this body aside, ensuring it is handled with utmost care and respect. We then take an empty body, which at this specific time of year is dry and without any wax, and place it here in the middle with precision. Afterwards, we return the body that was previously on top back to its original place with care. Alternatively, another option is to simply place this dry body on top, especially if the weather is cold and chilly. This middle one, or rather the second one, stays in its place, and we place the empty one on top. But if the weather is good, in May, when it's warm, we place it in the brood chamber. To get early honey, we give it without wax. We don't have a choice right now for the bees to cope. We can give 1 or 2 wax sheets, and that's probably it. The bees are spreading it very quickly because we placed it in the brood chamber. They will quickly clean the frames, polish them, and repair them. That's it. That is, this work will be done very quickly and efficiently. It's a holiday. And joyfully. The cheesecake will be we are already completely returning it to its own, and the division we are also returning it to its own. That's how our bees come in May to our regions, and that's how the dandelion blooms. Here by this time all the bees are the average body of the bees with you as planned. Quickly, if you had it cold in this, let the case be put on the turntable, also will fall down, but not so quickly better. Then change more than once still cold, if two and warm in principle the same, but if May is warm, put it in the section will still mean the dandelion starts to whistle. And here it is very important you look for, I will explain why. It is possible to remove the diaphragm. Before that moment, before the dandelion blossomed. It is possible, but undesirable, extremely undesirable for the reason that what if the dandelion has bloomed or the acacia has bloomed, but there is no good weather? Prolonged bad weather, and the bees, if you unite them, will take it and go into a combat state. This is not beneficial for you at all. Therefore, we do the following. We watch closely, we monitor the weather, we keep an eye on the forecast. We see how the dandelion has bloomed, how the bees are already working on it. That is, both the split is working well and the colony, because by this time the split is already strong, 2 queens have been working. There was one bee, we just recently separated them and put them back into the hive, but there was only one bee. There was one, and the development was quite fast, and we also fed them. They developed well by this time, especially in our region, and now the dandelions have bloomed so abundantly. We see the bees are working well. Those who have scales at the apiary can see that there is some weight gain. It doesn't come from dandelions, for example, but we still see it. There is a gain, even if it's 500 grams or 400 grams a day, that's already a gain. You can already collect marketable honey using this method. What are you doing? We will absolutely, essentially and undoubtedly definitely need a queen excluder. We almost never use it, but in such cases, it helps a lot to collect honey properly. The honey flow has been going on for about 2 days. You look at the forecast, and it's good, variable but still good weather. What do? You remove the split, set it aside, and take the diaphragm. It's always there for a reason. When adjusting the diaphragms, check if it doesn't crawl here. Sometimes when you shake the floor, it means the diaphragm is no longer needed. We return the split to its place, put the split back, and remove the old cover. We take the queen excluder, place it here, and take a super with drawn comb, not from the doctor's, but with built-in comb from last year. We place the drawn comb above the queen excluder and return the cover back in place. What we did was give this lower colony enough space on this meter because we had previously provided a super with drawn comb. The queen has also started laying eggs during this time, and they are working successfully. We place the split, which has filled the entire super, on top of the main colony, removing the diaphragm, thus merging the bees. The bees will not fight among themselves because they have a shared airflow through the metal windows, or rather, the metal screens and windows. They have a shared exchange through it, and the bees place the queen. That is better. That's for sure. When we merge them like this, they already place one queen. If there is a good nectar flow, they can continue to work with 2 queens for a couple of days. But there will still be only one queen. Absolutely. And the best will remain, which is very good for you, and you really need it, and it will fit. Why do we place the queen excluder? For the reason that the queen does not go up to work. You definitely do not need that. At this time of year, when the bribes are not yet abundant, the common man, the white cancer, they are not abundant, meaning there isn't enough strength to gather honey, to fill it all. quickly, like in summer. The bees start filling everything, and the queen goes down and lays eggs in them, causing misfortune. No, here you have the queen in spring, and she still wants to go upwards. Therefore, a queen excluder is desirable, not just desirable, but actually necessary if you want everything to turn out well. So, look, in their natural state, you don't have such strong colonies at this time of year. What else have you not managed to develop? But you already have a strong swarm, and the colony is due to the fact that all these operations have been done, and it's already somewhat strong. A lot of young brood is now emerging, young bees both in the swarm and in the colony, and you have combined them. Therefore, it results in an unnatural strength of the colony for this time of year. The foraging has begun, and the bees see a lot of it, a lot of brood, many bees, and they direct all their efforts towards foraging, because their food is already running out as they approach the dandelion or the catkin. The instinct to gather honey kicks in. So, we had a split here, and this entrance must be open because the bees are used to flying to the split through this entrance. These two entrances can be completely closed, and the lower round and flat entrance should also be open. However, it is not necessary to open everything widely at this time of year. That is, here we have the bottom 100% closed, and these two entrances are closed. And where the split is used to fly up and down, where the main colony flew, we keep open. Because if it's too open at this time of year, it will be bad. The nights are still cold. And because of this, you might end up with a cold or something, and you don't need that. Next, we monitor. This nectar flow usually isn't long. We check. Open the top cover, pull it out, take a look. If the bees have started capping the honey, and some upper part is already capped, and we have a good forecast ahead, indicating a good nectar flow, then we can take this super of the second round and put this on it abundantly. Normally the honey flow and good work, put again an empty super on it, and definitely with drawn comb, not with frames but with drawn comb, and this super that is already full of honey and has started to be capped, we will place it on top. If I placed an empty one on it like this, there won't be such an effect. The bees immediately see that firstly, their horse is small, but we still cut them. They quickly adapt to this situation, and they see that they have a lot of emptiness and try to fill it. All of this is how our spring nectar flow from early flowering plants goes. And yes, when this flow is over, you remove the supers, shaking off the bees as you do. So, with this method, you effectively get one super that is guaranteed to be full of capped honey. If the weather was good, you get 2 supers of honey. You removed them and took them away. That's it. You can sell this honey as May honey, like the agency Kakri and so on. We remove the queen excluder. It is no longer needed this year. Here we have a strong colony. Quite strong. But the bottom super has been freed. While the bees were working, the queen did not lay eggs down here, and the brood has already emerged. The nest is now in these 3 supers. So what do? We remove these 3 supers from the bottom. And we set this bottom super aside. What to do with it often depends on your wishes. The super we set aside. We have 3 supers left. Here. It was on the floor, down to what we have. Now, everything starts as we did in the previous video, in the previous lesson, where we showed the beginning of VVDMA. Immediately after the main nectar flow, without delay, we find the queen and place her in the bottom super. Only in this case, unlike the last time, our bottom super is not all the same with brood, because we had a strong colony combined, and with that method, we had less brood. Here is the male. But this is only to our advantage, because we have already lost time. They did everything earlier there, while here we have given it some time. We can't just finish like that. It turns out that we haven't actually lost anything. We find the queen and place her in the bottom box. We placed her in the bottom box. We installed the queen excluder and opened this small window with the separator grid small. There is no need to open the large one right now, and we return these two boxes to their place. The majority of the bees, as we remember, are still flying down, because only the split was flying up, while all the main bees were flying down, and they continue to fly there towards March. There will be slightly less consumption in this super than here, as the queen was laying eggs upwards while we directed her down, and for now she has enough work here. After 10 days, we approach this as usual, as we did in previous methods, searching for queen cells here and distributing them into 3 parts, just as we did in the previous video. Furthermore, all the work is done as in the previous video, except at the end of the season, this split that we have on top is not combined with the colony, but left in one super above the main colony, which will be in 2 supers. For those who haven't watched the previous video, everything is explained there. So, in this way, at the end of the season, the bees go into winter again with 2 supers, the main colony and 1 super on a completely closed queen excluder, ensuring all separating windows are closed. The split goes into winter, and the previous video had the same information. We merge this swarm with the main family for winter, removing the diaphragm. It's the same as in the previous method, but the swarm is placed above the main family. That's all. You get 2 families in spring, and open in spring. Plug above the dividing grid, you get a common bee, and 2 common queens work for this family, but only until honey flow, early honey flow with acacia, or with a nectar source. In the next video, we will discuss how to obtain a large number of swarms using a diaphragm, and also how to benefit from it. Stay tuned for the next video. We are also preparing a video book that will detail all our developments, how we work, and show everything in it, including all the methods we use and apply. This book will be available on a flash drive and will contain a lot of information, but it will also cost quite a bit. In the meantime, watch our videos. They are very interesting.